President Trump is holding firm in trade negotiations with China, with the military risk just as important as the economic one. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo laid it all out at what's at stake in an exclusive interview with me yesterday. We've talked a lot about the economic issues between China and the U.S. I want to really focus on the military and on the risks that have to do with national security. Can you talk us through the massive risks that exist today in terms of China and the U.S.'s national security?
When you think about risk from a military perspective, it's all about capacity and intent. That is, what do they have the ability to do, and what is it they seek to do? And we're concerned on both fronts. We've watched President Xi make a commitment that said he wouldn't go to the South China Sea and build out militarily, and yet he's done so. We've watched them engage in a very significant arms buildup, not only in the quantity of arms, but in their lethality, their capability, and their capacity. And so on both fronts, it's something that America needs to make sure that we do all we can to ensure that we stay in a posture where we can deter this threat, so that we don't ever have to send our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines to a war. I can't imagine that happening amongst these two superpowers. It's our job at the State Department to make sure we never put America in that position.
So let me stay on that theme for a moment, because there is speculation that the Chinese have not only stolen intellectual property from our companies, costing them tens of billions of dollars every year, but also from the Department of Defense. There's speculation that there is, for example, a buildup in terms of stealth technology, which they stole from the United States, submarine secrets that they've stolen. Can you characterize that? Is that a fact?
I can't say a whole lot, other than it's the case that we worry about it every day. The threat of theft, not only of commercial intellectual property, but of military technology, is real. And we're doing our best to prevent that from happening. I am confident that it is imperfect, and that other countries have obtained some of this. You can look at some of these systems and you see similarities that suggest that they may well have not created these from scratch.
The Japanese apparently had to alert and scramble their own fighters 628 days last year. That would be twice a day to react to coercion in the waters. China's rise is impacting the Indo-Pacific. So give us your sense of that, about this gray zone operation, if you will, intimidating and coercion of other ships from other countries coming in the South China Sea.
So President Trump laid down a strategy to expressly push back against that. It's what we call our Indo-Pacific strategy. It has many components. There's a commercial component, there's a diplomatic component to it, but there's also a military component to it, to make sure that we guarantee for America that these sea lanes remain open. So your point about Chinese ships sailing in places that they haven't sailed before, Chinese aircraft flying with more frequently, pushing boundaries up against places where they would normally fly, is a very real risk. And it's something that the United States Department of Defense has pushed back against, too. You've seen increased frequency of our activities in those very same places to ensure that U.S. commercial traffic can continue to have access to those sea lanes. They're very important for our economy and for America's economic growth.
So this is basically operating below the level of conflict.
That's right.
And yet gaining dominance in the region. Do you believe that the U.S. has a comprehensive whole-of-government strategy to fight this?
Yes, I do. We need to go execute it. We need to execute it with great vigor. The great news is here, this isn't a partisan issue. I've spoken to nearly every member of the United States Senate about these issues. Democrats and Republicans alike understand these concerns, express their willingness to support America's efforts to push back against it. And I'm convinced we'll be successful in doing so.
I was reading a good piece earlier. It's called "America Begins to See the Consequences of the Past Policy Errors."
Yeah, Maria, this is a really good point. We're late to the game. We watch this happening, and kind of like when you put the frog in the pot and turn the heat on, you didn't see the temperature rising as quickly as we should have. Frankly, that's true for the whole world. I think the whole world is waking up to these concerns. And so we spend a great deal of time making sure that we have the right strategy, that we have resourced it properly, but also in sharing with our allies in the region, Singapore, Vietnam, all of these countries in East Asia and Southeast Asia, ensuring that they too understand these risks so that they can be part of the team, part of the alliance that pushes back against this Chinese threat.
So should we be breaking formally against past administrations in terms of maintaining this neutrality when it comes to China?
So it's complicated. We have big commercial relationships with China. Important components of our economic well-being are tethered to China today. But it is the case, and the president, quite rightly, whether it was making sure that we have fair, reciprocal, free trade with China, his decision on Chinese technology, these are things that previous administrations refused to do. Put America, as you said, behind where we should have been. We were too late to the game. But President Trump and the team recognizes this challenge, and we are now determined to put in place all of the resources needed to push back against it.
Let me ask you about these comments that were made recently. Admiral Davidson, who took over as the Indo-Pacific Combatant Commander, said in front, as well as Chairman Dunford, testified in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee that we would not win in a war against China.
Yeah, I didn't hear him say that exactly. I would always belong America. I hope it never comes to that. I can't imagine that it will.
But they have the largest military in the world?
Yeah, America is very capable. I don't want to spend a lot of time getting into details, but I'm very confident. I was a former soldier. I know the greatness of America's fighting men and women. I'm convinced that there's no power in the world that America couldn't, if required, handle in a way that would protect America's interest all throughout the world. What
are the implications of no trade deal with China? Do the two largest economies have to have a partnership?
You know, we may or may not get a deal. I couldn't tell you the answer to that. Much will turn on whether China is prepared to do what President Trump has asked them to do. It's pretty simple, right? Fair, reciprocal, a set of trading rules that apply to both countries. President Trump is perfectly prepared to allow American companies to compete against Chinese companies, but he's not prepared to allow them to continue to steal our intellectual property, force American businesses to transfer their technology. He's not prepared to allow them to put tariffs on American goods when there aren't any tariffs on their goods coming into our country. I hope that there's a deal. I hope there's an arrangement that will work to the benefit of each of our two countries. But if there's not, I'm very convinced the American economy will continue to grow.
Should we be worried about them lashing out at the United States? I mean, now we know that China is considering U.S. rare earth export curbs, these rare earth that are 17 chemical elements used in high-tech consumer equipment. There was a story recently the Chinese have taken all their panda bears. I mean, this is sort of, you know, opening up into consumerism and where people can understand what this means, that China may stop the exporting of important chemicals that the U.S. needs.
I always, when I hear these concerns, these worries, I'm always reminded that the American people have lost and suffered for decades under the current rules. So there's somehow this idea that President Trump's decision to push back against China caused problems for the American economy, when in fact the challenges have been the fact that the Chinese were in a trade war with us a long time ago. We're simply trying to get back to fair, to reasonable, to reciprocal, to transparent. That's the president's mission. I can't predict what the Chinese will ultimately do, how they'll make their decisions. Will they attempt to respond? They did. They put some counter tariffs on when President Trump initially put his tariffs on. I'm sure they'll take actions in response. But the American people should know China has had an unfair trade relationship with the United States for an awfully long time, and President Trump's singular focus is to push back against it.